Welcome to my channel. My name is Johannes. I'm an economist and I enjoy riding motorcycles. And today I want to analyze the legendary motorcycle brand Harley-Davidson and why their sales in recent years are dropping like hot potatoes. Harley-Davidson, the brand that once stood for freedom, rebellion and the epic feeling of wind in your hair, like portrayed in various well-known movies. Well, for most of us it was more like wind in your helmet or wind on the bald head, but I think you get the picture. 2006 was a great year for Harley-Davidson. They sold over 349,000 bikes. The roads were filled with roaring V-twin engines and bikers who all pretended they were playing in a heavy metal band. Biker build-offs were shown on TV where personifications of pure masculinity built ridiculous, irrational bikes. With see-through wheels, impossibly high handlebars, high neck frames and zero cornering clearance. Those all were signs of a bygone era. But now, well, 2024 is looking very different. Sales have halved. But what happened? It seems like Harleys are being dropped like hot potatoes. But why? What are the reasons for that? In this video I will give you my analysis on that matter. So stay tuned and I hope you enjoy it. Reason number one is that the demographic bomb has indeed exploded. Harley's customer base was mostly made up of the baby boomer generation. These are the folks who loved the highway, once had long hair, tattoos and were willing to spend a small fortune on a motorcycle. Peter Fonda and Mickey Rourke were idols in the 70s and 80s for a reason. But now that generation is getting older. Some of the Harley riders now prefer a comfy touring or V-twin shopping cart, aka the three-wheeler, over a rigid frame bobber where each road bump feels like a kick to your spine. This trend is great for Harley-Davidson touring model sales, but pretty uncool if you want to be a hip, rebellious youth brand. So yes, the generation-induced image shift of Harley-Davidson is indeed an issue today. But what about the next generation, the Millennials? They are very different, but are they? Do younger people suddenly spend more money on things like avocado toast, beard lotion, or even worse, electric bicycles over Harley-Davidsons? By looking at the statistics, there are indeed fewer younger Harley buyers than previously. That's a fact. And there are also some product categories which are consumed to a higher degree by younger people. That's also a fact. But the reason for this is not a sudden spike in avocado toast addictions, and it is also not suddenly cool to ride an electric bicycle over a Harley. The roots for this issue go deeper than many people may think, and they are mostly economic, which brings me to my next argument. Many people argue that Harleys are damn expensive. A new model can cost you the price of a small car, and this may be too much for many new customers. And let's be honest, most of us need a car to get to work and not a 650-pound cruiser that looks cool on the highway but feels like a piece of furniture in the city. There's no doubt about it, Harleys are a leisure product. But let's also be fair here and differentiate a little bit. There are more affordable and rational Harley models such as the Softail Standard or the Heritage, and then there's the CVO line, which can easily be considered as luxurious toys. But what about the price of the basic models, such as the Heritage? Are they really too expensive? And how did the price change over the recent years? Let's look at the inflation-adjusted prices for Harley models over the past 45 years. In 1980 there was no Softail yet, but there was a comparable model, the FL Electra Glide, which comes closest to the Softail Heritage today. In the 80s it costed roughly $6,000 in the US. Adjusted for inflation, this makes nearly 24K in 2025. On the other hand, a brand new model year 2025 Softail Heritage costs somewhere between 23 to 24K depending on the color scheme. So actually in real terms the price didn't change at all. Okay, you may think now, but Johannes, you are comparing apples with oranges. You cannot compare the FL with a Softail Heritage. Okay, so let's take a look at another model where a direct comparison is possible. The legendary Fat Boy. In 1994, the Fat Boy costed $12,000 MSRP. This corresponds to an inflation-adjusted price of roughly 30K in today's terms. The actual price of a brand new 2025 model year Fat Boy is around 23 to 24K in the US depending on the color. So actually, Harleys didn't become more expensive. In real terms, some models like the Fat Boy even dropped in price. So what's the problem, Sherlock, you may ask? Let's take a look at another economic factor, household income. One could argue that maybe people became poor over time and have less disposable income for Harleys. So let's compare the median income between 1980 and 2024. In the year 1980, the inflation-adjusted median household income was at $58,000 per year, while in 2024 the median household earned $80,000 in the US. This statistic suggests that population became richer over time. What the statistic doesn't include is the price of capital gains such as stock returns. But most importantly, the statistic also doesn't include real estate prices, which constitute a large degree of household household spending. In 1980, the average house in the US costed $64,000, which corresponds to $235,000 inflation-adjusted dollars in 2024. In the year 2024, the price for an average home in the US is almost double, so this is a huge increase. What I'm trying to say here is that the income statistics does not reflect the true spendings of a household. Ignoring real estate prices is a major factor, since it is a huge piece of lifetime spendings of a household. So by looking at the statistics, I think it's fair to assume that there may have been a small increase in median income at best. When it comes to the income in the US, what matters even more is the income inequality. In the past decades, the income became much more unfairly distributed among the household. Income inequality can be measured by the Gini coefficient. This measure can take a number somewhere between 0 and 1. If the value is closer to 0, we have a perfectly equal distribution of income. And if it's closer to 1, then there is extreme income inequality. Note that perfect equality is not desirable in a society, since a society needs a mechanism to reward more diligent workers. So a good value for the Gini coefficient is somewhere between 0.2 and 0.3. Now let's take a look at the data. In 1980, the Gini coefficient was estimated at 0.3, which is a pretty equal society. The value increased to roughly 0.5 in the year 2024. This is a massive increase in income inequality, and it's also a major factor for Harley sales. This is a huge shift in society. It is a fact that income is now more unfairly distributed, which results in a higher share of poor households in 2024 compared to 1980. Now, why is this an issue for Harley-Davidson? The problem is that the rich households don't buy enough Harleys to compensate for the income decrease of the middle class, which is historically buying most Harleys. The stagnation of real income in the US has started in 1971, since the end of the gold standard. But the technological progress continued, and thus the seeds for the ongoing disaster were planted back then already. And we are starting to feel the effects more and more today. Simply put, the monetary system chewed up household compensations over the past decades, and now the firms are increasingly feeling the subsequent effects too, because consumers' purchasing power is dwindling away. And of course, it's easier to blame other factors such as avocado-toast-eating hipsters and aging boomers. But this is a topic for another video, and if you want to learn more about it, then there is a great homepage which is called WTFhappenedin1971.com, where you can find more great illustrations about the income development in the US after the end of the gold standard. What I can say here is that the economy is a major factor for Harley's decline. That's a fact. But the company is not innocent either. Years of mismanagement and wrong decisions do not go unpunished. The company has messed up several things which could have been avoided over the years. One of the things that Harley messed up is the product strategy. What was Harley's solution to the challenging economy? On the one hand, the company tries to sell fewer models at higher margins to the wealthier customers and try to transform Harley into a luxury brand. On paper, this seems like a good strategy because, as I said previously, the richest 1% became even richer, so they may as well pay a higher surplus on premium Harleys. But in reality, the picture looks different. Yes, the margins went up per bike, but the overall revenue still falls and keeps falling for Harley. This is because Harley is selling low-budget models like the RevMax, Nightster, and premium models like the CVO line on the same showroom floor. For the wealthier buyer, this looks like selling a Porsche and a Kia next to each other. And there's a reason why nobody's doing this. Don't get me wrong, Kias may be great cars, but if your strategy is to sell a premium product, you have to exude quality and exclusivity. A Kia doesn't fit into that picture. Ultimately, the final result is a declining purchasing power of the average household, and the wealthiest buyers are not able to compensate Harley for the crumbling middle class sales. On the other hand, the company is still trying to earn money from what is left of the middle class and has overextended its investment capacities. Developing new models is a costly endeavor, and unfortunately too many models have failed in the recent past. Harley's Indian-made street model was not successful. The Livewire is a sales disaster, and many new models like the RevMax, Sportster and Nightster are selling like fridges in the North Pole. There are some successful models like the Lowrider ST, which sells well, but this is not enough to compensate the failed product policy of the past. Furthermore, Harley is failing over and over again to attract and bind desperately needed young customers. Yes, young rebels with long hair still exist and not all of them like avocado toasts. But many of them prefer to ride Yamahas, KTMs or simply buy used Harleys because they see no interesting options in Harley's showroom floor. The Yamaha MT-07 costs $8,600 MSRP, while Harley's entry-level Nightster is at $12K. Having ridden both bikes, I can assure you that there is no advantage of the Harley over the Yamaha, and the Yamaha costs much less. Also, discontinuing the DYNA was a huge mistake. The model created and nurtured the whole youth scene with dudes riding wheelies and doing ridiculous stunts on their 650-pound steel horses. This is exactly what Harley's image desperately needed. That alone would have made it worthwhile for Harley to keep this line, even at smaller margins. Yes, the Milwaukee 8 Softail Street Bob, which is supposed to replace the DYNA, is a great bike. But now there is no more distinction between a DYNA and a Softail, which was previously given, and many consider the M8 Softailized DYNAs as not real. Many consider the DYNA line as Harley's rebellious youth line. The whole coast style and wheelie scene has developed around the FXR and DYNA platform, and Harley did the wrong thing and discontinued the DYNA in 2017. A fatal mistake. Another even huger mistake was discontinuing the EVO Sportster. Harley blamed the EPA regulations for that. This is of course rubbish because now a Chinese manufacturer produces the same knockoff Sportster, aka the Stormbreaker, and sells it to the American European markets. Meanwhile, Harley tries to compete with that by selling their own Nightster, which looks and feels inferior to the Chinese Sportster. Basically, Harley created its own competition by its own model, which is simply ridiculous. And the irony of that matter is just brutal. So if I want a new and authentic entry-level Harley with real potato sound, I have to buy a Chinese knockoff because this is the most authentic entry-level Harley there is on the market. Come on guys, get your stuff together and clean up that mess. It's possible and you can do better than that, and you should. It may have been worth to keep the Sportster just for the sake of preventing competition. Or as a Chinese proverb says, a clean home brings a peaceful mind. In this case, it's worth looking and learning from the competition, guys. So what now? Is Harley doomed or can it still be saved? We are living in turbulent times and it is possible to revive Harley sales again. And here are my suggestions. Number one, do some fan service finally. There are some successful bikes which many customers would love to return. There's the DYNA, there's the EVO Sportster, heck even the FXR. Those bikes were and still are highly demanded. Why is Eric Buell reviving the FXR and Harley doesn't? Yes, the company may not have the highest margins on these models, but at least they will appease some of the Harley fans who still suffer PTSD after Harley's DEI endeavors and sturges. The EVO Sportster and the DYNA Street Bob were perfect entry-level bikes. Revive them and you will see climbing numbers of young customers. Number two, clean your house. There were too many new models which flopped on the showroom floor. Yes, new tech is great, but established, correctly upgraded technology is sometimes even better. For example, BMW sells its adventure touring bike, the GS, for more than 40 years, and it is still considered as one of the most advanced and best sold motorcycles in Europe. Harley could easily do that too with the FXR, or let's say the Sportster, which has an even older heritage than the BMW does. Number three, make the customer a priority again. Harley customers are getting tired of the countless attempts by the company to increase profit at the expense of the customer relationship. For example, Vivid Black was once free of charge and it now suddenly is a premium option. Black powder coating on exhaust and engine parts should also be free of charge. This is not a value gain for the customer. Freight costs didn't exist a few years ago either. Your customers are noticing those sneaky attempts to raise the price without adding any additional value. And this is not doing any good to Harley's reputation either. These things leave a bitter taste which makes the customer doubt the brand and consider other options. Yes, I agree the margins may be somewhat lower, but you will end up with more satisfied customers and ultimately a larger fan base again. Whether sales bounce back or Harley ends up in a museum once is still up in the air. Otherwise, we'll end up with a new generation of rebels cruising down the street on electric scooters. I love my Harleys and there's still some hope that the company will get back on track. Roll up your sleeves and fix that mess. It's possible. That's it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hit the like button and subscribe, and don't miss future motorcycle topics for my channel. Stay on two wheels and see you next time.